Hi, this is Jason with Agland Coop. Putting together some information today to send out to you growers. We're taking a look at some stand counts and some yield counts out in the field. These particular ears came out of our corn plot, but I've been out in some other fields too, taking a look at different hybrids and some different scenarios that have been out there. You know, a lot of this corn is starting to dent, so it's going to be more of an accurate yield count when we're taking a look at some of these ears. The first thing that I do when we take a look at doing a yield count is doing a stand count, of course, first. And normally the way I do that, and the way a lot of other people prefer, is on 30-inch rows. You step off 17 inches, 17 feet 5 inches, and you count the number of ears in that particular length of row, and that gives you your population. So in this particular test plot here, we had roughly right on average 22,000 population. Now what we do on the yield counts is we take an average ear out of that length, and we count the kernels around times the kernels long. And generally I don't count the bottom butt of the ear, the top two or the bottom 2 or 3 rows, or the top 4 or 5 rows. It depends. You know, we can see here we did have some kernels pollinate, but they did abort. You know, some of these smaller kernels are just going to go through the combine head, so I kind of stay away from this top inch. And taking some yield counts here on some of these hybrids, you know, we got 16 around on this particular one here, 40 long times 22,000, that's our population, and we divide that by 90. Now where that 90 comes from is the average kernels in a bushel of corn. Now if you have a smaller kernel on your ear, you're going to have to increase that number. If you have a larger kernel, you're going to have to decrease that number. You know, it's going to vary by seed size, kernel size, test weight, things like that, and what your population, what your final yield is going to be. But taking a look at some of these here, you know, 156 bushel. This one here, 16 by 38. We're at 148 bushel, 154, 167, 176, and so on. One thing to look at that I've noticed in some of these fields, you guys want to do some yield counts. It's also a good chance to take a look at how your hybrids are performing. This particular number out in the plot, I found a lot of ears that are filled to the tip. Now, this hybrid does not have ear flex, which is pretty obvious. It filled everything that it could. Where you take a hybrid like this here, where it's got some very, very good ear flex to it, it was still trying to push more on because we had the moisture and we had the right conditions for it. You know, granted, it didn't fill it all the way to the tip, but we can see what the potential was there, you know, that we do have with it. You know, and some of these hybrids with a lot of ear flex, that's what we're looking at. And also another thing that I noticed out in the fields that a lot of people are talking about is our second ears that we're seeing on these plants. You know, here is on these 2 ears were on the same stock. You know, this was the second ear, obviously. But a lot of these second ears, you see the big, tall, long husk. You got the silks hanging out, but you grab a hold of that and there's nothing there. You know, we had good pollination here. We did have good pollination, but quite frankly, only 2 kernels that survived on here. So a lot of these second ears really aren't going to produce much, but some will. You know, that's not going to be consistent through the field. But it's something to take a look at. See a lot of ears where maybe just the bottom bud is pollinated. You know, that's something the guy's going to have to take into consideration when we're setting up our corn heads, you know, our stripper plates, to make sure that we're getting things tightened up. So these small ears that we do have, we're getting them. We're not stripping them through the head, and you know, because of course that'll be volunteer corn for next year. So there's something to take a look at. And on the 29th of August, we are going to be having a test plot down here in Delmont, at the Delmont location, where we're going to be taking a look at the hybrids that Agland Co-op offers, the DeKalb and the NK, looking at our drought guard hybrids, which this year is really not a drought to speak of versus last year, of course, but looking at some of these drought guard hybrids, some of these new numbers are just phenomenal. It's just amazing, the ear flex they got, the potential that's out there. You know, and they're all basically new hybrids. They're not old hybrids that they threw the drought guard trait into. It's all completely new set of line of genetics and hybrids. So there's some really interesting things coming out next year on the DeKalb and on the NK side as well, with some of their artesian numbers that we have in the plot as well. So on the 29th of August, we're having a plot tour down here in Delmont at 5 p.m. Anybody's welcome to come. We'll have representatives here from DeKalb and Asgrow, and us as well from Agland Co-op to, you know, talk about any concerns or any things we're seeing out in the field, taking a look at new hybrids and things to look at coming into next year. So with that, I want to thank you again. This is Jason with Agland Co-op. Thanks.